Hi, welcome to Beeping Edge Tech Reviews, and this is Matt.
Thank you. Like you said, I'm Matt. I am 30 years old. I was born and raised here in Southern California. Lived here most of my life, except for a couple brief stints living out of the country, actually. Um, as for kind of my background, so growing up, I was kind of into nerd things, maybe a little bit different from Dan in some ways, but similar in some other ways. I was always very much into like fantasy novels and fantasy type things. I also was a one of my favorite movies growing up was the Star Wars original trilogy. We had the VHS tapes that we would watch that I would watch those on a lot. Um, anyway, so as far as kind of tech background and so on. Really, the like tech itself for me started in high school. I took a course ostensibly to prepare us to take the A+ exam. This was a little while ago, so the exam was a little different at the time, but basically what it is now. Um, I did that, and then here and there, I've kind of messed with computers, put stuff together, messed with parts, programs and stuff, kind of on my own as a hobby. But I've done other things as well. I'm very much into I read a lot, maybe not as much as I used to, but I read books all the time. I've gotten very into tabletop gaming, D&D, World of Darkness, Warhammer, things like that. Um, but my primary kind of focus for a long time um, was I went to college. I was majored in linguistics, and I was actually planning on becoming a teacher at some point. And so that's kind of the direction I was going. And I did that for a little bit. I went and taught abroad in Japan for about a year and a half, um, about 5, 6 years ago at this point when I left. And I was I came back. I started on a master's program to get a master's degree and an education credential. Um, And at that point, there are a few different things happen, kind of coinciding at about the same time. Um, Among those things, the pandemic hit and everything kind of went topsy-turvy. And I decided that for me, the best thing to do at that point was to kind of shift into a different direction. And I decided to take this kind of hobby that I'd had, something that I enjoyed, but I never really done a lot with professionally, and I decided to see where I could take that as a career. So I ended up, after a couple of years, becoming an instructor at a technical school, and I teaching students IT skills. I've gotten a few certifications under my belts, and we were helping students get those certifications, and that basically brings us to here. The school the school went down, and we started up. We decided to start up this channel. And Dan, how about
Yeah,
you? I'm sure you can
yeah.
fill in
Real
some of
quick,
those
which
details.
certs did you get?
I got so that the certifications I have right now, I have A+, which is a pretty entry level one. I have the Microsoft 365, I believe it's Modern Desktop Administrator Associate, and I have the Azure Administrator Associate certification, and I'm currently working on finishing up uh, the Network Plus and Security Plus CompTIA certs to kind of round out the CompTIA trifecta and just keep moving forward from there.
All right, cool, cool. Okay, folks. Well, my name is Dan, and I'm from far southern Wisconsin. I just turned 60 this year. So I was a little kid in the 60s. I was an airplane nut from the time I was a little kid. I also started reading comic books when I was little. The first thing I ever wanted to be was a pilot. And then a little later in life, my parents handed me a pair of these and said, "You'll never fly anything but cargo." So I didn't. And anyways, at that point, I didn't really know what to do with myself, but I also jumped a little higher when I watched the Apollo moon landing in 1970, spring, summer
69.
of 69 it was. I was actually in summer school that year because we had moved from Wisconsin to Nebraska. And believe me, that caught my attention. Now, this is one of the things Matt doesn't know about me because we worked together for about a year. um, I actually was an avid reader too, and I was into all the Tor fantasy novels. Okay,
Yep.
so uh, Forgotten Realms, Dragonlance, that
Oh yeah.
kind of stuff, but also hard sci-fi from a young age. I read pretty much everything I could get my hands on for many, many years, so we do have that one in common. Um, and then at 2 weeks after my 17th birthday, I went into the Air Force and I was working on radar, classified radar. So I can't really say much about it, but even at this day and age, I wouldn't think of it other than it was radar. And I was actually stationed inside the United States at Cannon Air Force Base in New Mexico back then. This was 1980, 81, right around there. I did tech school in Denver, Colorado for about 8 months. And then I really kind of discovered that I wasn't really suited for the military life at that young age. I just was not that into being under the thumb of authority.
Okay. I was confused for a moment there.
Yeah, that's all right.
Yeah.
We were just double checking we actually were getting audio here. All right. So, anyways, I left the Air Force. I went and did all kinds of little odd jobs, working in a lumber yard, working in small factories, working in fast food, doing light weekend maintenance in a small hospital in Illinois, little Catholic hospital, apartment maintenance, all kinds of different things. A lot of mechanical stuff. I've always been very, very mechanical. It kind of runs in the family. And my mom was a carpenter, first female carpenter in the state of Wisconsin, journeyman that is, and that's actually in the history books. And After about 10 years of doing that, I was right around 30, 29 years old, I think I was, right about Matt's age now, right? And I was working quality control in a small factory in Woodstock, Illinois, and I got called into the office around lunchtime and told that in 2 weeks the plant's going to close and go away. They're moving the jobs somewhere else. And then about 1:30 in the afternoon, I got called into the office again and told, well, your girlfriend's in labor up in Wisconsin, and you better head up there because you're going to be a dad today. And yeah, that stress face. Anyway,
Very eventful day.
yeah, very eventful day, to say the least. So, yeah, I worked for a couple more weeks and then the plant closed, and I got yeah, I got that. That's actually when I got the job in the hospital was right after that. It was weekend, doing maintenance in the hospital and on third shift, and I got lucky enough that there was a program for workers that were dislocated due to foreign competition that would put me through 2 years of technical school, and I went back to school for aircraft electronics. It kind of follows the military a little bit, and took it very, very seriously. Pulled straight A's, got a 2-year vocational diploma in aircraft electronics, not an associate's degree. They didn't make it associate's degree level until the following year, but I got out of there with straight A's, 3.9 GPA, because I was very determined. And the same month I graduated with honors on the dean's list, 3 airlines went bankrupt and flooded the market with all kinds of experienced techs. So I wasn't going to be doing avionics for a career, so I started mailing resumes. Yeah, mail, type them out, mail them, etc. Old school on paper. Man, that's a throwback. And So I mailed them out all over the state of Wisconsin to anybody that looked like they were doing electronics, and I wound up getting hired in long distance telecommunications, and I spent 21 and a half years doing long distance telecommunications. First couple of years I was doing field installations at customer locations all around 2/3 of the state of Wisconsin was my territory. I was mostly installing these computers on old school dial-up phone lines that would automatically dial an alternative carrier long distance code because back then you had to dial a special code to get anybody but AT&T for your long distance. All right, and it was a distinct savings. It was a little not that long after they broke up AT&T from their local long distance monopoly nationwide mostly. And so I did that for a couple of years. We installed some T1 channel Max, so kind of like a very early version of managed services um, in that regard. And then after a couple of years, we got bought by a bigger company. Now this is going to be a repeating theme here. We bought by a bigger company because that happened a lot. And one of my sayings in telecom was put your company logo on your name tag with Velcro. It just went that way. All right. And anyway, so I got put into a big switch room and got to learn these big, huge voice switches. Well, I thought they were big and huge when I was in Milwaukee, but boy, when I went down to Chicago to help them out for a couple of weeks, I saw like about 10 times the switch and two of them. And then it was a few months later, the manager asked me to transfer to Chicago. I went down there and I learned all kinds of stuff. Big diesel generators that are emergency backup power, like anywhere from 1 to 2 megawatt diesels. Those Caterpillars would have filled my garage here. Um, yeah, it's a two-car garage. It would have been full up to the ceiling ding there. Anyway, and all that kind of fun. And all the big air conditioning units and testing optical circuits and swapping out cards and backbone routers. But I rarely ever got to log into anything but the voice switches. And in the meantime, I kind of taught myself building PCs. Now this is where I differ a little bit from Matt. I didn't get an A plus back then. I got an old computer that they were tossing out from work that had no hard drive in it, and it was an IBM 286 chip, I think, and uh, just you don't want to know. You just don't want to know. All right, and a copy of DOS on 5 1/4 inch floppy. Yeah, I think it was a DOS 3, and also a paper copy of DOS for Dummies, and that's how I learned PCs. And then I went through the whole Windows 3.1, Windows 95, Windows 98, 98 SC, XP. I skipped everything from XP to 7. Didn't bother with any of those. And
You weren't missing out on a whole lot.
yeah, and when my son was 11, my wife and I bought him a PC in pieces and made him put it together himself and load all the software. He's now a couple of years older than Matt. So I built a few PCs, but it wasn't something that I did like all the time. Yeah, it was like I might build one every 3 or 4 years. Okay. And then after about 21 and a half years, we have my stepson and his wife and our two granddaughters over here in California. And we moved out to California to be here while they were little granddaughters and not teenage granddaughters that have no time for grandma and grandpa. And so we succeeded in that. But meanwhile, I tried to start a small computer repair business, and it was a very mom and pop, and there wasn't enough of mom and pop to go around, and so that didn't work too well. And then I wound up going for IT certifications, formal certifications, at the same school where Matt and I wound up working. I ended up working there as an instructor for 4 years. Matt and I worked there together for around a year, maybe a little more. So we have worked together for a while, and we seem to work together pretty well, I think.
I like to think
Yeah,
so.
yeah. And So while there, I got an A plus, an MCSA in Windows 10, which is before the Modern Desktop Administrator associated, and a lot less Azure involved, and a lot more operating system involved. Microsoft kind of changed the way they did things after I got that, and then I got an MCSA in Windows Server 2012. That's three different certification exams. Yay, fun. And then I got also a CompTIA Net Plus, and I am working on Security Plus as Matt is doing, and I also want to take Linux Plus as well. Um, and I have some of the training provider certifications that go with that too, and Matt does as well. Yeah, so both of us have got a strong background in IT and certifications and stuff, and so we decided together that we work well together. Why not try to start a YouTube channel focused around IT? It would give us something to do while we're searching the world for new opportunities and new doors to open.
Yeah.
So on that note, we'll maybe talk a little bit about Beeping Edge. And Matt, I'll turn it over to you and
Hmm.
see, and we might even hash out a little bit here in this conversation some of the stuff we're actually thinking of doing. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, so
So yeah, as for a little bit about the channel content, I suppose.
well, let me pick up
Yeah.
on the spot for a minute. Okay, so I think we kind of want to start out with right now what it's like to switch from Windows to Linux. We want to do a series of step-by-steps on how to download Linux, how to create an installer for it, and how to install it on a PC, and then go through and actually show how to use Linux in a point-and-click manner as much as possible. We kind of had the idea to show people how easy it is to use Linux for a desktop operating system. And this has to do with the fact that in 2025, there's going to be millions of PCs that are still pretty good hardware that will not be able to run Windows 11 when Windows 10 is going to reach end of life. So we don't want to leave those PCs in the dust. We don't see any reason for that. And I have a sneaking suspicion that Microsoft is going to turn Windows into a by subscription cloud desktop model after Windows 11, kind of like what they've done with Office versus Office 365, which has now just been renamed Microsoft's 365 just recently. Um, so we're planning on starting this series along that line, multiple videos. So like, how do you install Linux? And guess what? Linux is free. So, and there's a ton of free application software for it too. So we're going to kind of start off there, and then maybe from there branch off into reviewing tech products and stuff like that. Yeah, along those lines, maybe even open up some kind of a Q&A regarding, people's technology problems that we might be able to help them with and see if we can figure those out in some videos. You just never know where it's going to go from there, and thoughts.
Um,
Don't take it too serious. I mean,
yeah.
we just that was already biting off a lot.
Ugh, yeah. Um, yeah, and we'll expand on this a little bit in the videos themselves, particularly the ones related to installing and operating, Linux OSs. One of the things we kind of wanted to focus on with that at least was showing, kind of like Dan said, showing that it's not as difficult to use, most, kind of consumer level Linux distros as it can often seem. It will look a little different from Windows, but it's not so different that you can't figure out, how to do most everything you need to do. Obviously, Linux has, it uses shell a lot. At least a lot of more advanced users will get very comfortable with using shell to do a lot of things in Linux, and sometimes they'll work exclusively
Command line.
in, yeah, on a command line essentially in in the shell environment. But you can do with the distros that we're going to be going over and looking at, you can do most of the things you need to do just, with a mouse and a keyboard. Um, and that's something that people don't always realize. Um,
Yeah, it's probably 90% of what we're going to do, 95% of what we're going to do in our videos with Linux is going to be point and click. Any typing you'd be doing would be mostly your documents and the occasional command that's kind of important to do just to start something or turn something on. But we're going to try to make it as point and click friendly as possible, and it's not going to be that much different than Windows. By the time you get done watching the series of videos that we'll be doing, it'll be pretty easy for you to use Linux. And that way, if you've got an older machine around that won't run Windows 11 when Windows 10 goes bye-bye, then life should be pretty easy for you because you'll know what to do. You can even actually install Linux alongside Windows so that you can use both. But we're not going to cover that right off the bat. We might do that later on a different machine. Yeah, but for right now, we're just going to go into installing Linux and how to use it. All right, and on that location note, we should talk a little bit about where we're located, where we're video casting from. And I don't mean the garage, I mean the actual city, town, state, etc. So,
yeah.
Matt,
So we are located in Southern California. We're located in the Temecula Valley region in the Inland Empire. So we're a little bit, we're not quite in the middle of the cities, but we're kind of in a nice in between spot. Riverside's not too far, LA is not too far, San Diego's not too far. It's a pretty good kind of in between location, and that there's a lot of obviously because we're close to Orange County and Los Angeles, especially San Diego as well. There's a lot of kind of cutting edge things going on here. Um, and it kind of it gives us the opportunity um, to kind of look at those things as two guys who are close to it, physically as well as kind of the industry itself. Um,
so we're in the Temecula Murrieta area. Like Matt said, he's lived here all his life, so he's very familiar with it. I've actually been here 7.5 years. Love it. I'm much more used to the Great Lakes region and of course all the frigid weather that comes along with that. I love to call this place summer's winter home. I say that all the time in my other YouTube channel, which is a lot more just like fun and playing around, neat, geeky, nerdy stuff, But anyways, um, on that note, one of the cool things that's here, actually, I actually applied for a job up there. You might not know that when I was moving here, we have the Mount Palomar telescope, the Hale Observatory, about, I think it's a 200-inch reflector. If I recall correctly, it's owned by Caltech now. It was built back in the 1940s, and up until the 70s, that thing was the biggest telescope in the world. And it's really cool. I went up there and toured it one time. And it's up on Mount Palomar. Imagine that. And that was a very cool place. And I actually applied for a job installing robotic instruments on there when we were moving here, but I think I wanted a little more than they wanted to pay. Man, that would have been fun.
yeah,
But anyway, eh, that was 7.5 years ago,
it's a little while ago.
a little while ago. Yeah. Well, story of job applications everywhere, right? Yeah. So anyway, so that's where we're at. That's kind of what we're planning on doing with the channel, and I'm sure it will evolve as we go along. Um, and we'll thank you all for watching. And let's put it this way. I'm Dan,
I'm Matt.
and thank you for watching. And remember,
Together,
together
we're
we're
better.
better. See you next time.